Okay, so let me get started with teacher productivity. And this is the second kind of category of tools for particular tasks. And this task is productivity. And this is basically how can we we're focusing on efficiency, the efficiency E for this week. How can we complete teaching and or learning activities more efficiently? Because a lot of times there are lots of laborious tasks that this can help with, like communication or teachers creating lesson plans more quickly. So we break it down into three basic categories. Basically, technology that could help you plan your lessons. So, for example, there are so many different great resources out there to find existing lesson plans or activities, so ideas for you to implement in your classroom, as well as like creating worksheets or creating lesson plans. So before, when teachers would actually have to go from a textbook and take a particular worksheet, they would have to cross off different things or really hone in how do they want to kind of present this information to their students, and how do they design worksheets or basically lesson materials. But now there are so many different things out there available that you can use. You saw a lot of this in the Content Exploration Week, a lot of things that currently exist even in open educational resources. So that would be like pre-class types of activities that you could do before you get to class. The next one being in-class types of activities. So how do you actually manage the class or facilitate learning? So you can do this through, for example, like recording class events so that students that weren't there during class can view it later on, whether they're absent or sick, or maybe they just want to review how you solved that math problem later on. Also facilitating learning with multimedia resources or having students take notes using multimedia resources. Even your classroom management types of things, technology can help you with this piece. Lastly, post-class activities. So what happens after the class? How do you communicate with parents? How do you communicate with your students? Making sure that you get their homework, providing feedback to them. What does that look like? How do you do? And then even doing sorts of resources and things along those lines. So let's start with before a class. So when you're planning for a lesson, ton of different activities or things that you can use here. So you could use corporate sponsored teacher resources. So there's a ton of great stuff on Scholastic Teacher. There's Smartboard Exchange if you have a Smartboard. There's Promethean, Active Planet if you have a Promethean board. Lots of different resources depending on what kind of technology devices you have. So figure out what resources are going to be in your classroom, and then look online for what the corporate sponsor has done to that. There's another one, BrainPop. There's Discovery Education. I want to show you BrainPop for just a moment. I want to show you BrainPop because it's a particularly fantastic resource. It's got a lot of different ones in science, social studies, and as you go into it, let me see if I can find a free one first though. So this is today's feature. Here's free stuff. So let's say that we want to do it on cells. So they've got a really great introduction. There's usually a really cute movie. There are quizzes associated with it. It's kind of, you can make a concept map, a different challenge for your information and activity. So all of these things are surrounding it, and it's usually in a pretty engaging fashion.
Hey, I need one of those 8x2 pieces. No, 8x2. 8 dots long and 2 dots wide. Dear Tim and Moby, my sister said that my body is made of cells. Is this true, and just what the heck are cells anyway? From Jenny. Well, your sister was right. You are made of cells. She's made of cells too. In fact, all living things are made of one or more cells. They're the building blocks of life. If you could look at yourself through a microscope, you could see that you're divided into...
Anyway, so you can see these particular resources exist. We could actually look and review these particular things. So tissue comprised of cells, so it tells you correct. So you can look through those, a lot of different examples there that you can kind of check out and see. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. In terms of like planning a lesson, there are other places that you can go as well. There are some great teacher communities. So Kathy Schrock really does have a guide to everything. She's got some fantastic things, as well as some things that are specific to different subject areas. So Teachers Pay Teachers, a lot of you probably have seen this before, but there are some really great resources on here, and it only costs a few dollars to to kind of get the different teacher resources. Again, you can look through here, font choices, things that are free, things that are under $5, so you can look and get those resources from other people as well. This is one of the other resources that was on here in terms of publicly sponsored teacher resources. So there are different things like through Discovery Education and PBS, lots of NSF grants that have funded resources. Illuminations is another one of my favorite. I'm going to take you there too. So Illuminations is fantastic for math from pre-K all the way up to 12th grade. You can check your particular grades and what you're looking for, either by the NCTM, which is the National Council for Teachers of Mathematics, or the Common Core Math Standards. So you can look through specific things. These are all different either lesson plans or interactive. So if you want to look for interactives that are specific here, we'll look at that. So lots of different elements that you can kind of play around with and explore. Here's the Library of Congress, so you can look at different things that you're interested in here, different Civil War photographs, so it gives you lesson plans, again, to go through here, as well as some really great resources. The other one that I wanted to show you was Read, Write, Think, which is English Language Arts, another great, fantastic one that's sponsored by National Council for Teachers of English. And again, similar types of things. There are lesson plans, there are student interactives. They even have mobile apps as well that you can kind of go through and look at. Really, again, fantastic place to look for resources. Another thing to help you is to kind of figure out, are texts at the appropriate reading level for my students? So figuring out if it's too complex or what that looks like. So for example, here's readability, and I copy and pasted a Wikipedia link to Project Gutenberg. And it says it has an average grade level of about 8, and it should be easily understood by 13 to 14-year-olds, and there's all this additional information. But basically what I look at is I just usually look at this part. So depending on what grade level you are teaching in, you can also copy and paste text directly in here, which is what I did with the Story Tools one. I took this one right here, and I copied it, and it said it was at a 20th grade level. So let's pick another one. I'm going to copy this here, come into Story Tools, and I'm going to paste my content in here, and I'm going to check my readability. And so here it says that it is higher than school year 11. So this is obviously probably too complex for my students to be able to read. So instead, you may want to look at different sites like Newsela. So Newsela is fantastic because you can click on it for your students, and it has it at all these different grade levels. So I can pick it at the max level here. I can even change it into Spanish for my English language learners, which is fantastic. Or I can look at it from the lowest level in English here. So it talks about the similar types of issues, but it does it with much easier text. So that's Newsela, and they've got a ton of different articles that you can look at, ton of different libraries and different subject areas that you can examine, and you can even search by reading level and skills. So now let's talk about productivity tools inside the classroom. So you've seen us use Nearpod before. Pear Deck is very similar, and so is ClassCake. Those might be ones that you want to explore. I know that a lot of you have seen Kahoot, and we've used quizzes, I think, in the class. If we haven't used them yet, we will show you an example later. And a lot of you are also having Class Dojo in your class. And I'll show an example of that in a little bit. But basically, you can use it to multitask and to differentiate in your classroom. These are examples here of attendance graphs, so you can even do attendance in Google Forms and things like that, ways to keep track of your students. These are QR codes if you haven't seen these before. These are particularly fantastic for young students, so if you want them to go to a website, especially if you're using iPads, you can have them scan the QR code and it takes them directly to the website as opposed to them typing anything in or even having to click on a link. Those are some of my favorites. There's also classroom management. So these ones, SmartSync, allows you to see what's on other people, or as the teacher, you're able to see what everyone is working on their iPad or laptop or whatever it is. So that's really helpful within your class to be able to do that. Student Callout app This would also be like similar to Class Dojo. Once we put all of your information in, we can do like a random student assignment. I think that's also in iDocio. So let me take you to Seesaw, because that was one of the other examples here. And it's basically like a digital portfolio. This is particularly fantastic for early grade levels, and it allows you to capture student learning. So this is what the students see, and they can take a picture of what they've done, and they can record a video of themselves doing something, they can draw something, they can go to their camera roll and upload something that they've already worked on, complete a note, or link to something that they've done. So this would share it, and then as the teacher, you would see what the students are working on and what they've submitted. So this is an example of all the students submitting the same report so that you can see that. And the teacher can access it from any device and either share it to their overall classroom story, or they can send it to the parents or organize different areas. It's a really great asset for parent-teacher conferences. And lastly, you can even do scan QR codes. So it could be a QR code for young learners, and they can sign in using this way. So lots of great ways to interact with your students and kind of keep track of everything, and really with your parents. You can also keep track of your students' assessment skills with this as well, if you use the upgraded version. So that was all the free version. And this one allows you to actually assign a simple 1 to 4 star rating for student work in order to get real time of how they're progressing towards particular key learning objectives. So how well are they counting? So it's more along the lines of mastery level, so that you can see that. And you can even add notes that are only visible to teachers too. So here's an example here. I think that they're still struggling with this. And of course, strengthens the connection between home and the school. So I think that's really critical and important. The last one here I wanted to share with you is iDocio. I think I pronounced that correctly. But it allows you to have this entire grade book, which looks fantastic. You can have attendance data, gradebook stats, even timers in here as well to kind of keep track in your teacher gradebook. They have bulletin boards so that you can organize different information for your students to see. Again, to be able to click on it and share with your students. This is the example of the lesson planner. So it's really handy because then you can see so you can kind of scroll through and see what's going on in every classroom and be able to expand. So great from an administrator point of view, as well as having the diary. So here's a more specific look at that. So you can see it as a day, as a week, as a month, and kind of get an overview. And you can move things around, so if you didn't get to it in that period and you want to move it to the next day, you can do that as well. So that's what's going on in your day, what you're going to be working on in the first period and the second period. And then this is what the month looks like, so you can see what you're targeting for each day. It's a bigger, broader viewpoint. Slightly different viewpoint of what you're looking at in each one. You can look at just particular periods. And there's the timeline of what you're focusing on. So lots of different options and viewpoints that they show you throughout here. And then there's also even a student report too. So once you gather information, you can share that student report, and it looks something like this, where you actually see, here are the test averages for that particular thing. So that would be a good, easy thing to be able to share with parents. The last one that I wanted to share with you is, I'm going to click through here to show you Google Classroom. So within Google Classroom, it's basically quite similar to Canvas, although it's a much cleaner and simpler. It doesn't have quite as many functions as Canvas. But you can basically create assignments, create different posts, share different links with all of your students, and if you have Google Apps for Education in your school, it's really easy for you to be able to integrate Google Docs and all of the other different assignments, especially if you're using the Chromebook. So this is just kind of an example of what Google Classroom looks like. And again, you can create questions, polls, those type of things. So it has some really neat features as well. Let me go back to go into some of these. Other things that you can do in your class would be the idea of having your students take notes. So Evernote is a really great one that you can use with this. Evernote allows you to integrate pictures, video, media, etc. Really great things. Microsoft OneNote is one of my favorite tools to use, although it's not necessarily as easily used. Another really cool one that just came out is called Google Keep. In Google Keep, it has an extension on it that does really great, but you can basically it's just like a bunch of sticky page notes, and you can create new labels, create reminders, other sorts of things to keep all of your notes in one place. So that's another option as well. So different productivity tools for after class. I think a lot of you have used Remind, or many of the W200 instructors sign up for Remind. And this is great because it sends a text message to your phone reminding you what you need to do. Class Dojo is another example that's fantastic because they can communicate with parents and just remind you like, hey, make sure you don't forget this, important assignment. So those are all options. Lots of learning management systems that are available here. So we've already talked about Google Classroom, and we've talked about Class Dojo before, and I showed you Seesaw, which is another one that's great targeted for younger students, as well as Blooms is another one that's for younger students with a Z. And so this is another really great parent-teacher communication one that allows you to communicate back and forth with different posts and ask for parent volunteers for different things. So that's particularly fantastic for early childhood. Edmodo is another really favorite one for elementary in particular. The more powerful ones for secondary are going to be Google Classroom and Canvas, Blackboard, and Schoology. So those are the most common ones, at least within the state of Indiana. Edmodo has a feel of kind of like Facebook for, let me sign up in here, I have it already. So it looks similar to Facebook, that you can kind of explore it. It's got ability to share links, attach files, add from library, or share with your Google Drive. You can do assignment, quizzes, polls, snapshots. Again, the cool part is that you can exchange back and forth with your different students, and that can be a really fun feel for it. Let's keep going to the next one. So I showed you Audacio. Front Row also has some really great rubrics and things along those lines, but you can create rubrics through either iRubric or RubyStar. Lots of different ways that you can make these so that they're quick and clickable, and it makes them really easy for you to grade in the long run.